Hello, good morning. We are going to be talking today about in our first backroom chat. So I should kind of preface that this is going to be a kind of a series of different shows that we're going to put on here through our Facebook and then through StreamYard that talk about really the back room of opening up your own mental health practice or any other holistic wellness business. Really, anything that centers around having a service as your product versus selling actual products. So, my name is Sarah Bovey. I am the founder of Elevate Health Collective, and I'm going to just speak a little bit about what Elevate is, especially since this is the first one that we're putting out there. And then diving into our first talk about the truth of working for yourself, especially if you're jumping into a business right out of school or professional training, or that's what you're intending to do. So I opened a private practice right out of my master's program called Uplift Counseling Center, and I have a lot of experience in the business world, a lot of self learning, a lot of classes taken. Because one of the downfalls about most of us in the field that we're getting into is that there's very little education around how to open a business. And the truth is that even if you choose to go to work for somebody else, you are still a lot of times being responsible for some sort of business management. And it's a huge disadvantage that we don't have any training in that. So when I opened my own private practice, I really fell into just kind of learning through a fire hose, so to speak, of how to be successful as a business owner. And I hit a lot of potholes along the way and wanted to make sure that that doesn't happen to other people. And so Elevate is really here to try to focus on a couple different solutions. One, we're trying to help people who are thinking, professionals who are thinking about opening up their own mental health or wellness practice. We're helping them get that started so that they have hopefully smoother sailing than I did, and that they own a successful practice and they're not feeling overwhelmed with all the hats they have to wear. And two, we're looking in the near future of opening up a brick and mortar location where people can, professionals can come and co-share space so that they don't have to get locked into long-term lease. And it's also going to be kind of a pillar for community members to get access to different holistic care. So more information on that to come. But today we are really going to dive into what it's like being your own business owner right out of school and making those considerations. So we're going to cover what the difference between a 1099 versus a W-2 worker is, talk about the highlights of business ownership along with the disadvantages or the storms of business ownership, talking about how much it gets started to cost, because that's a big question that I get asked. How do you make ends meet? So, with that, if you're thinking about getting started up, how do you get funded to even do that? And then, lastly, where to even start in this process. So, one of the biggest questions that I get is, and this is really pertinent right now, even if you choose to not go into owning your own business, because a lot of practices out there are moving into hiring, and I use hiring loosely, 1099 workers. So, if you're hired on as a 1099 worker, you're an independent contractor. That means that you're self employed. You are actually a business owner as a 1099 worker. You're just contracting with somebody else's business to provide services with them. What this means is that you also have full control over how you do your business. Um, there is a lot of gray in this area. So, a lot of practices are probably not doing this totally ethically right now, because as a 1099 worker for a different business, they should not be dictating how you set your hours, the location that you work out of. With that, they shouldn't be paying for you to go in any trainings. I think it's also gray if they're paying to get you insurance credentialed. It really depends on how much legality that they want to take on. So, on your side, you would be fully responsible, or should be, for purchasing your own trainings, for supplying your own tools for your practice. You really, again, need to get in the mindset of, if I'm hired on or if I'm contracted as a 1099 worker, I am my own business. The reason why this matters is because if you operate as a 1099 worker, let's say that you are a therapist and a counseling agency says we're going to bring you on as a 1099, and you don't do any legal business formation through your state, then you are potentially exposing yourself to really high liability. And so this is happening a lot where people are brought on as a 1099 worker. They then don't realize that they're actually a business owner, and they start to do business. And again, if you're not setting yourself up, where you have maybe like an LLC or another type of formal business structure, you now don't have a veil between your business and your personal assets. And so if you're doing the 1099 route, you don't need to set up a full practice, you don't need to set up a full business, but there are things that you should be doing and consulting with, at least at the bare minimum, a lawyer, to make sure that you're setting yourself up for protection going that route. Now, being hired on as the W-2, that's what most of us are more familiar with. This is the traditional employee. So you are really under the management of the place that you're hired into. They set your work hours, you get a regular paycheck, and the company controls, how and where you do your work. And then your employer will manage taxes and benefits. So the big takeaway here is that if you are a 1099 contracted worker for some place, then you need to get into the mindset of, yes, you are a business owner, even if you don't have a business that is traditional in the sense of a brick and mortar place to go. And as we're doing this, if you do have any questions, you can throw them into a chat, or you can always reach out to me too if you have more specific questions that you're not wanting to put out there. So again, if you're brought in as into somebody else's business as a 1099 worker, you really should be looking at getting some, at the bare minimum, legal support so that you're setting up that business correctly and protecting yourself and your assets. So a lot of questions I get around employment consist of what should I be considering when I'm choosing between working for someone else or working for myself? And so one consideration, especially if you're still in a training program, is your state law. Some states do prohibit practicing alone if you're under a provisional license. If you're watching out of Wisconsin, for at least therapists, they don't. You can open your own practice as long as you're able to secure supervision, and that can be an outside person supervising, your profession. Um, Competency is a big one. So this, I think, especially for students starting out into the fields, but it can come up for anyone. There's that question of like, do I know what I'm doing enough to open my business? And from a practice standpoint, because remember, we have two different sets of hats here. We have the practitioner, and then we have the business owner side of the house. So the business owner side, yeah, like again, we don't get a lot of training here. So there can be a lot of question of how competent is my business going to be. But I can guarantee you from being in my own practice that there's a lot we can do to help you feel more confident on that side. From a professional standpoint, you definitely can open a business out of school. No, I don't think anyone graduates their program and comes into the field and says, I know what I'm doing, right? That even years into practice, it's hard to have that feeling. So don't let imposter syndrome get into the way of being your own business owner. I think if you are entering into your business and you are questioning if you're able to practice in a competent way, let's say like an emergency pops up and you're not sure that you would know what to do in that case, then maybe that's where working for someone else can provide you with that more kind of hand-holding supervision day to day that you may benefit from if you're in that place. But if you are like, you know what, I largely can figure this out, especially securing a supervisor, I know that I can get that support, then don't let that get in the way of working for yourself. Being a business owner absolutely takes drive. So if you are a person that just wants to like show up to work to meet with clients and then go home, then working for someone else is for you. And that's okay. Like there is nothing wrong with wanting to do that. But if you're a person that you're like, you know what, I think that there's some enjoyment that I would find in having my own practice, being a business owner, kind of dabbling in marketing, dabbling in finance, dabbling in all these areas, and you have the drive to do it, then you are going to do well in the business field. Financial stability and benefits is also a bigger component to why people may not go into practice right away. And that financial stability really is determined by you somewhat as the business owner. So, a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, there's a lot more stability working for someone else. And there's truth to that because you're usually on like a payroll, on a salary, or you know what you're going to make hour by hour. But at the same time, there's risk there. That place could close down at any point. You could get let go. So when you are, there's a limit to how much you can make. So when you're your own business owner, there's a lot more freedom that comes from that financial stability, even if there's some risk with how stable that's going to be on a week to week basis. And then we all know that benefits, you probably heard this at least, that benefits can be harder when you work for yourself. Absolutely. When you go and get hired in as a W 2 worker somewhere, usually that benefit package is there. But what I am seeing in trends is that the benefits are kind of getting worse instead of better, especially not keeping up with the economy. And so, as a business owner, there's a lot of things that you can do to secure those own benefits. Like what some people don't realize is that you can even like let's say that you anticipate hoping to try to get pregnant your first couple years in practice. You can get some short-term disability for relatively cheap that covers maternity leave. So there's a lot of ways around these benefits that you shouldn't count out if that's what's kind of keeping you from doing it. And this last one is really if you want freedom and autonomy in your work, then being a business owner is absolutely for you. That was probably the number one reason I went into my business right out of school is that I had a lot of other professions where I was working for someone else. Like I was a teacher and I was really tired of having to be told when I was going to work, how I was going to work. And with my life, having kids, I'm also in the military. I wanted that freedom and autonomy. So truthfully, even on some of the harder days where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I a business owner on top of a provider? I should just go work for someone else. The reason why I never do is really this last bullet here, because I enjoy and find so much benefit from making the decisions for myself that works in my life. So let's talk about more highlights of being a business owner. Because what I'm not here to do today is to sell you on it. Like this, I'm not going to sugarcoat the business field, but I really want you to see that there are some benefits here, huge advantages. And so that first one is just an extension of what I was talking about. You have greater autonomy in nearly every aspect of your job. How you work, when you work, who you're going to see, where you're going to work. I get to choose how much vacation time I want to take a year, and I don't have to ask anyone permission to take that. There's just my hours, I set them myself. So again, that freedom and autonomy is probably the number one pull why people go into owning their own practice. There's a lot of potential for increased earnings. So we've brushed on this already. I'm going to be realistic with you. If you are coming into this field and saying, well, I want to open like a six-figure practice, that's definitely doable. Maybe not right away. But you'll see, I bring this up because you'll see sometimes ads pop up like learn how to own a $200,000 practice. You working for yourself probably aren't going to see $200,000, at least in your first couple of years, unless you have a creative niche and you market it, because there's always ways to do that. But can you make more than what you would make working for someone else? Yeah, absolutely. And again, you have a lot of control over that. There's so much accomplishment that comes with being a business owner, and on top of that, you get to determine what your brand is going to be and make sure that that aligns with your passion and values. We're working for someone else. You're kind of under their thumb on all of that. So that can even, go to the point of I get to choose to an extent who I want to work with. Like I market towards a group of my target clients are the target clients that make me passionate about doing my job. Where when you work for someone else, sometimes you don't get to market that way, or you'll get hired and then all of a sudden you start getting these extra clients on your load that you weren't anticipating. I see that a lot with practices that work with students. You get hired and you're clear and say, I really don't have interest in working in the schools. And all of a sudden, 6 months into your job, that creeps in. So you get to set your own boundaries with your practice. And then there's always personal and professional growth. The creativity of being a business owner is there. There's a lot of self-learning that you can do not only on the business side, but also the professional side. But it's not all cheery. So there are huge disadvantages of being a business owner. The first one, and probably the biggest, is that there are so many hats that you're wearing. So we talked about the provider hat that you already have, but then on top of that, you are going to be the financing person, the biller. You're going to be the marketing person. You're to some extent going to be doing your taxes or have a little bit of knowledge of how to do that, some legal stuff. You're the administrative assistant. There's just a ton and it can get really overwhelming. But one way around that is to really lean on a lot of the helping professionals that are out there, because even though you may be in practice by yourself, there is a lot of support that at the end of the day sometimes is cheaper to just pay someone else to do it than to take that time away from you doing what you do best, and that would be meeting with your clients. There isn't a limit on what we can make, but also with the mindset of you're probably not going to have this lucrative practice, especially right away, if you are in it by yourself. But around that, again, there's job security because you get to determine, your own schedule, and hopefully, as we see healthcare reform continuing to increase, that we do see higher income just all around. There are disadvantages with the volatile economy right now. There's if you are a private pay versus insurance, that's going to be more volatile than, let's say, private pay is probably more volatile than insurance. But right now, a lot of insurances still don't have great mental health care coverage. Some of you who maybe aren't in the mental health field, but in the wellness field, may not even have insurance as an option. And so that can make some months tighter than other months. But if you can diversify your revenue streams, there's just a lot of ways to, again, kind of protect yourself so that you do have more of a steady income. And then we talked about benefits already. If you are married or you have a partner, you can rely on them for those benefits. But there's certainly, although this is a limitation, it's certainly one that you can move around, and even have better benefits than sometimes working for someone else. And the last one is that the private practice field can get really lonely. If you are working by yourself, that there's just not a lot of like backroom talk and connection like you would have in a place where there's multiple employees. But that's where there's groups out there that you can connect with. You can lean into co-working. For example, in my private practice, I have a partner. We kind of co-share the space. And so we have each other, even though we each have our own businesses, there are times between sessions we'll come out and just kind of chat and connect. And that really helps combat the loneliness. So other considerations in determining is going into my own business right for me is how much initial time and effort is going to take to get your business off the ground. It's significant. Can you get started in a business in a couple weeks? Yeah, like you could certainly open up shop tomorrow and start meeting with people. But in order to really do the due diligence, I would say that it takes a couple months of planning, to have something that you probably feel confident in opening. There's something called business plans in the business world. And so we're going to talk about that in a second here. But these business plans are basically your plan of how you're going to operate. You do financial projections as part of that. And the benefit is that that can also be taken to the bank or to lenders to get funded for opening. And so we're going to talk about how those can get rolled out. But that really is a great way to make sure that you are successful in opening this practice up. So unless you're on a tight timeline, I would say give it a couple months, of work to kind of hash through that business plan and get everything the way that you want before you open your doors. I get asked a lot too, like, how do I grow my client base rapidly? And there's a couple of answers to that. One is that it's really important that you pick a niche. And that is something that basically is like the target clients that you're hoping to see. A lot of people get stuck in this trap of like, I'm going to market to everyone because I want everyone to be able to come in so I can grow my practice faster, my business faster. But what happens is that when we market to all, we're actually speaking to none. And so it's faster to grow your business when you pick a target market and then learn how to communicate what you can, what your products will do to help that target market. And that all can come off of that business planning as far as how you would do that marketing. Another thing is networking in communities is huge. The reason why with Elevate, I'm so big in helping people get in the field is that I don't view our field as competitive really at all, and that's true for all of the helping fields here. There's such a need that I don't think are at a place ever, at least in the next 50 years, where we're going to see us be able to get to a place where everybody's getting the care access that they need. And so networking with other businesses that are similar to yours, networking at local business events. I mean, these are all great ways to just say, hey, like this is what I'm doing, come to me, and getting those streams. And once you get a core group of clients and you build that rapport with them, then they start to do your marketing for you. Because when a friend tells them, hey, I'm not feeling great, I'm looking for this, they're gonna be like, oh, I know a person. And that's just truly how you grow. We talked about the payment model, so insurance versus private pay, having to make decisions there. That can all be part of your business planning. And then I've already talked about niche. So let's talk about how much it costs to get started. And it can vary widely depending on your location, the size of your business. So are you wanting to start out by yourself or work for other people? And then the scope of your practice, what services you're providing. I put some key expenditures on here. I'm gonna move myself just so that you can kind of see those, but this includes these are some of the main areas that we would budget around for startup. You gotta think about your office space. Some people are avoiding office spaces altogether and starting telehealth, to just grow if you have that option. Sometimes if you're in a different like, if you're a body worker, obviously, you'd have to meet with people in person and have that space. Um, we're looking at office furnitures and decor for most of us are probably our biggest, where our bigger portion of our startup money goes into, because that is kind of our equipment. We definitely would need professional liability insurance, business insurance. All of us usually have some sort of licensing fees with our state, paying for marketing, um, paying for staffing if you plan to hire others, or it could be paying for the people that you're contracting with, like a lawyer or an accountant. We also want to budget in like any continued education we may need. So that could include continued education for your field or also business education. All of these are write-offs for your starting your practice. Any technologies, so that could be the like literal computer that we're working on. A lot of us need some sort of electronic health record. A lot of that has billing folded into it. And then if you need any special telehealth equipment, if you're doing it that way, that's where again a lot of the portions of our startup goes into. But to give you an actual number, it can really range. I would say anywhere from 2,000 to 10,000 to get started. For me personally, in the Eau Claire, Wisconsin area, I think that my startup cost, I anticipated 10,000. I think I came in around 6,000, and that was furnishing about 3 rooms, a small reception area, and getting some new technology equipment. And so, could I have done it a lot less expensive? Absolutely. I think, for me, rent was I kind of looked for like a medium-sized place. Um, Definitely not like a luxurious uh, counseling practice, so to speak. I moved into one that was a little bit nicer later on, but just getting started, it worked for me. So you have a lot of control over your startup costs, but if you're thinking, okay, what is the range? I would say, 5 to 10,000 if you're going to be a brick and mortar location is probably reasonable. And then we look at how to make ends meet starting up. So knowing that, okay, at least, for me, if I did this right out of school, or even if you're working for someone else right now, $10,000 may seem unfeasible, to pay for yourself. So if you were to pay for that fully out of your own pocket, that's called bootstrapping. So if a person says, I'm bootstrapping my business, they're not taking out any loans or getting any financial support. But honestly, when you look at in the scheme of businesses, so not, just in general, startup costs for a mental health and wellness practice are on the very low end of business startup costs compared to other businesses out there. So, and it's a pretty safe model. Banks, lenders, they know that there's need for this. So it's not going to be hard to take a loan out. to get a line of credit, which a line of credit, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of this money that is like credit set aside for you to use as needed. And then you only pay interest on what you're actually pulling out of it. You could crowdfund. So, crowdfunding, you could use a crowdfunding site, or you could just ask family members to help either donate or to invest in your practice and then pay them back. Um, if you have good credit and are financially stable, or you have good financial management, you could even think on some of this lower end, like let's say that your practice was around $5,000 to open. You could put that on a credit card, knowing that it's pretty doable to probably pay that off within the first year. And if you get a credit card that has 0% interest for a year, that's even better. And you could set up a loan or line of credit just in case you're not able to pay back what you're wanting to pay back. You also have to consider paying yourself for that first year. With these loans, lines of credit, in the financial planning, like the business plan that you do, you should put your own salary in there of how much you want to make. So, you can really say, I'm not going to pay myself until everything's paid off. If you have the ability to make ends meet, because maybe you're relying on another person in your life, or you could pay yourself out of the business, knowing that that may be something that puts you in debt for the first 6 months to a year, but that when you do your financial projections, that you'll be able to pay back those loans of paying yourself as you build your caseload. And so this is all done in that financial planning. Typically, when we start a business, we want to do 3 years of projections on the financing side to just show that growth over time. And then there are grants out there that can help you get started too. Each community has different access to those, so it's good to just look around. Some community supports, like every community has a business group. You could access those. There's things called the small business development centers. Those can also point you in the direction of accessing grants. So, really, we get to, how do I get started? If this is something that I decide to do for myself, where do I even turn? And the first option is do it yourself. And I put the pot road, the road with potholes in the background because it can be a bumpy process. Again, most of us don't have education around business. And so you're learning how to be a provider as you're learning how to open and operate a business. And it can be a lot, but it's definitely feasible if you're wanting to do it yourself. Where to start is that business plan. And then you're going to start executing the plan. So there's a lot of resources out there also to help you with this business plan. I already mentioned small business development centers. You can do online research. So even just Google searching, like how to open a counseling practice, or how to make a business plan as a massage therapist. There's so much out there. There's books, and then there's also a lot of social media groups that are geared for each of our fields. And people are always asking questions, and they're about getting started in business. I'll do a little sales pitch at the end here for the products that I have, but that's not necessarily the intent of this. It's really to give people information. So if you do have questions, just let me know. Either, you can reach out to me, and I'll put my email up here in a second, or you can, even post on my social media page. But at elevatehealthcollective.org. So I will put that on the screen here so that you can see it. Right when you go to my website, there is a freebie that will pop up. And this is a startup guide that really will walk you through all the different aspects of starting that business. So it kind of is modeled around a business plan. It doesn't dive deep into it, but it just speaks to all the different components, and is a way that you can do it yourself, but having a guide in that process. Or if you're a person that's like, you know what, I want to avoid the potholes, I want to travel the paved road, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. And that's exactly why I'm here. I really wanted people to learn from my mistakes and to be successful. And so, I have this proven method, this lived experience with myself, with other clinicians that I've helped, as far as how to get started. Two different options here. I do have a live course that's going to be offered starting in January, down at the Collab in Eau Claire. And this is going to be meeting weekly, and we're going to basically just walk through together all of the steps of getting this business plan started. If that doesn't work in your schedule, or you want to just be at kind of your own pace, there I do have my on-demand course that's launching January 1st. So it's in the pre-sale phase right now on my website. And this is 7 business modules that really, again, walk through each of the different components of getting that business started. With this, you're going to get 6 months access to BizPlan, which is an online business plan template site. So we use that to mirror with the classes, and these are on demand. So they're broken up into little segments, short videos that you can watch and just really go at your own pace. And at the end, you're going to have a business plan that will be the guide to getting your doors open, to getting funded. There's also financial planning templates that come with this and a workbook. So this course is typically selling at $1,500. I am putting a special out there for watching this today, to get this for $250 instead of the 1500. And so that's something that I'm going to take the banner off here. You would just go to the website, and then on my website, there it's going to be like a button that says get launched, and it will take you to the purchase page for this. And what you'll have to type in is ECH founder. So that ECH founder is what will give you that discount. If you do have any issues with it, reach out. I'm limiting it to 20 because this is really my way of validating the system and getting feedback for it. And so that's kind of a founding member if you get this price. And so just know that that's there. Otherwise, again, feel free to reach out at elevatehealthcollective.org, at my social media page, at email, and I can put that in here too. It's just admin at elevatehealthcollective.org. Okay, so there's that. I'll give it one more minute here to see if there's any questions. All right. I don't see any popping up. So again, reach out if you have other topics that you'd like me to talk about and cover. Please let me know that too. And I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and a good start to 2024, which is coming up here.